Catherine didn't say a word, and somehow that silence just detonated Meghan's entire carefully planned return. Because while one woman was quietly climbing mountains, literally and metaphorically, the other was preparing a perfectly timed re-entry into the spotlight. And something went terribly, unexpectedly wrong.
Breaking today, Meghan Markle just couldn't deal with Catherine, the Princess of Wales, completing one of the most amazing feats for a royal who is recovering from cancer in total privacy, because she didn't shout about this Three Peaks mission at all until she had actually achieved it, which is just Catherine all over, isn't it?
Just days after stepping back into public life following her cancer recovery, Catherine didn't announce a grand comeback tour. She didn't sit down for a revealing interview. She didn't even tease anything on social media. Instead, she disappeared into something far more powerful, something almost invisible until it was too late to ignore: the National Three Peaks Challenge. England, Scotland, Wales, 3 brutal summits in under 24 hours. No spectacle, no countdown, no media circus, just action. And when the world woke up, it was already done.
Princess Kate has completed the Three Peaks Challenge to raise money for cancer. The Princess of Wales climbed the highest peaks in England, Scotland and Wales over a period of 24 hours. She says she took part in the challenge to raise money for the hospital where she was treated for her cancer and build awareness for holistic healthcare. Princess Kate has been recovering from cancer after revealing her diagnosis 2 years ago now.
Think about that timing. Think about how precise it feels, because sources had been whispering for weeks that Meghan's team was preparing something big, something polished, something designed to reclaim attention at the exact moment the royal narrative seemed open again. A brand move, a reintroduction, a statement, carefully timed, carefully staged. But Catherine didn't interrupt it. She erased it.
I'm so grateful to be here, to be strong enough to walk these hills, but more importantly, it's to give something back and acknowledge really all the incredible work going on up and down this country.
Because suddenly, every headline, every conversation, every piece of public emotion shifted, not toward a launch, not toward a rollout, but toward a woman who had just faced something deeply personal, and instead of speaking about it endlessly, chose to move through it, physically, painfully, visibly, without asking for applause. And that's where the disruption begins. Because this wasn't just a charity climb. This was a message without words, a reminder of what the public responds to when everything else feels manufactured. And the moment Catherine stood on those peaks, something else quietly collapsed.
You're not too cold. It's not great weather, is it? No, so many people stood on their t-shirts. Why are you doing that? What do you say? It's your lucky mascot. You got a name? I'm so impressed with nearly the second week. Yeah? So well done you. We'll be cheering you on. Hopefully we'll see you on Snowdon.
During that climb, when she met young Ted Haslam, when she paused, encouraged, connected, something deeper was happening beneath the surface. This wasn't just about visibility. This was about authenticity being witnessed in real time. No filters, no staged angles, no scripted emotion, just presence. And people noticed. They always do. Then came the stories, the unexpected encounters, the hiker who didn't even recognize her at first, the handshake, the quiet congratulations, the absence of spectacle. These are the moments that don't trend immediately, but they stay.
Just standing at somewhere waiting for my friend, and then I suddenly spot out Princess there, a lean female hiker who is really climbing up. So she was on her cap and in a quite dark outfit, and also carrying a black backpack. And then I suddenly realized she was Catherine. But I was speechless. I could not really know what proper names I should name her, because I don't want to be impolite.
And here's where it gets uncomfortable, because while Catherine was moving through 3 countries in under a day with no visible fear, no hesitation, no performance, there were already circulating narratives about why returning to that same environment was too complicated, too risky, too controlled for others. And people started connecting those dots, not loudly, but steadily. Then the real shift happened, not during the climb, not even at the finish line, but in the reaction, the way the story spread without effort, the way it dominated conversation conversation without promotion, the way it didn't need explanation. And that's when the carefully timed return began to feel off. Because imagine preparing something for weeks, maybe months, aligning every detail, every release, every camera angle, only to wake up and realize the entire emotional landscape has already changed. That the audience you were about to speak to is now listening to something else entirely. And then, almost on cue, something happened that only intensified the contrast. A sudden announcement, a product tease, a shift back toward visibility, toward branding, toward attention. But instead of reclaiming the moment, it collided with something far stronger. Because now the comparison wasn't subtle anymore. It was immediate. It was unavoidable. One woman climbed mountains and said almost nothing. The other tried to speak, and no one was really listening the same way anymore. And just like that, without confrontation, without acknowledgement, without a single direct move, Catherine's low-key victory didn't just succeed. And what makes this even more unsettling is what started happening behind the scenes right after that moment, because this wasn't just a missed spotlight. It was something far more disruptive. Insiders began quietly hinting that the carefully mapped out return strategy wasn't just delayed, it was thrown into complete confusion. The messaging no longer matched the mood. The tone suddenly felt disconnected, and the timing completely off. Think about it. When a narrative is built on anticipation, on build-up, on controlling when and how the world looks at you, the worst thing that can happen is for someone else to shift the emotional focus before you even arrive. And that's exactly what this felt like. Not an attack, not a confrontation, but a silent takeover of attention. Because Catherine didn't compete. She didn't respond. She simply moved, and the world followed. And that's where the tension deepens. Because now people aren't just looking at what happened, they're questioning intention. Was this timing really accidental? Was it just coincidence that one of the most physically and emotionally powerful public moments unfolded right as another carefully orchestrated return was about to begin? Or was this something more calculated, something understood at a level most people don't even see? The palace, of course, remained silent. No confirmations, no denials, just that same composed distance that only fuels the speculation further. But silence in moments like this doesn't calm the story. It amplifies it, because while nothing is being said, everything is being interpreted. And then there's the reaction from the public, which might be the most revealing part of all. The shift wasn't just in headlines, it was in tone, in energy, in the way people spoke about both women within the same breath, but with completely different emotions attached. One described with words like resilience, strength, authenticity, the other suddenly facing a wave of skepticism, not necessarily because of what was done, but because of how it now looked in comparison. And that comparison? It wasn't forced. It happened naturally. That's what makes it powerful, because no one needed to draw the line between the two. It was already there. And once that line becomes visible, it's almost impossible to erase. What's even more telling is how quickly the narrative began to shift into something bigger than just a single moment. This wasn't about a hike anymore. It wasn't about a product announcement. It became about identity, about credibility, about who the public believes and why. Because in a world where everything can be staged, edited, and controlled, the one thing that still cuts through is something that feels real. And whether intentional or not, Catherine's entire approach in that moment carried that weight. No build-up, no explanation, just action followed by impact. And impact doesn't wait for permission. So now the real question isn't what just happened, it's what happens next. Because when a carefully timed return loses its timing, everything has to be recalculated. The strategy changes, the messaging shifts, the urgency increases. And sometimes that leads to decisions that feel rushed, reactive, even desperate. And if that happens, the contrast only grows stronger. Meanwhile, Catherine doesn't need to do anything else. That's the most unsettling part of this entire situation. There's no follow-up required, no response needed. The moment already landed. The impression already formed. The shift already happened. Which means any next move from anyone else will now be measured against something that wasn't even trying to compete. And that's a difficult position to recover from. Because how do you reclaim attention when the audience has already moved on emotionally? How do you reintroduce yourself when the narrative you were stepping into no longer exists in the same way? And most importantly, was this really just a low-key victory, or was it something far more deliberate, far more strategic, hiding behind the quietest possible execution? Because if it was, then this wasn't just disruption. This was control. And if that's true, then the next move isn't going to be loud. It's going to be even quieter and far more devastating.